ready to vote. So a moment, please. There we go. All right. Let me know if my screen is visible to all.
It is.
Perfect. So as I said, we want to know you and we want to know what our audience look like. So I want everyone to go on to menti.com, type in the code or scan the QR code that's visible on my screen, and let's start voting and let's see what we've got. So let me quickly present the Mentimeter as well, and then we start cracking on from there. We've got practice head, solution lead, practice head, solution architect, BA, developer. Welcome all. Seems like we've got a good mix of people, RPA consultants.
Sorry, but I don't see the code yet. Yeah, code is the above, right?
Sorry.
The code is the above 72253082. That's right.
Yes, 72253082. Perfect. So I hope everyone has voted, and that's a good mix of audience we've got, Lairu. Don't you think so?
Yeah, it's actually good.
So I'll stop the share and we'll go with introduction. So I am Javeria. I am UiPath MVP, an RPA consultant, and also leading the UiPath London chapter. Along with me, we've got Arjun on the call. Arjun is also the UiPath London chapter organizer and the lead. He's an RPA consultant. Today, as a speaker, we've got Lairu Fernanda from Sri Lanka. He is solution architect and RPA lead in boundaryless automation. And also we've got Christina from UiPath. Before we move ahead, I'll give the space to Arjun so that he could speak for himself, and I'll shut up for a moment. So over to you, Arjun.
Thank you, Javeria. Thank you so much. Yes, as Javeria said, I'm an RPA consultant and also UiPath chapter leader, London chapter leader alongside Javeria. So really a warm welcome to everybody and Happy New Year. And hope we kickstart this year with a great session by Lahiru, and looking forward to have more sessions lined up for you all. So over to you, Lahiru.
Okay, thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And wish you all a very happy new year. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be a part of, to do a session in the London chapter for the first time that I'm doing. Okay, so let's start. Let me share my screen. All right, so do you hear me very well, Julia?
Yep.
Yes, Lairu.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So today's topic is going to be on solution architecture. So overall, this is a big topic that has a lot of things to talk about. But the main focus will be on how to design a good solution architecture. But before getting into that, let's also cover a few things regarding solution architecture and why we are talking about this. So these are some of the topics that we would like to go through today. What's a solution architecture, the role of a solution architect, the importance, and a few other stuff. And also we have a nice quiz at the end. All right. So before talking about solution architecture, let's try to keep it simple. Forget about the architecture for now and forget about solutions and everything. Let's first think in the language that we know, what is a solution? So when you talk about a solution, it's a way to describe an answer for a problem. So when we are talking about the RPA related things, we talk about the processes, the things that we automate. So when it comes to the technicals point of view, we talk about, we first evaluate the client needs and their problems, and then try to come up with a system that address this problem or the need by either replacing an existing system or by improving the current system. So this same thing applies for RPA as well. And it applies for any software engineering project that we do. So when it comes to solution architecture, before talking about the solution architecture, if you talk about the architecture itself, we all know that there are different kind of architects among us. Even if we plan to design a house for ourselves, we first talk to an architect who designed the house for us, and we talk about our requirement. This is how I need the house to be built, and these are the things I need in my house. And based on that, he asks different questions and then come up with a nice design saying that, okay, so this is your foundation and this is your house is going to look like. So that is architecture in a different way. But when it comes to RPA or any solution design, we talk about the solution architecture. So in this case, what we do is, just like before, here we talk about their process. So if a client comes to us saying that he has a process like this, and this is how it is being done right now, and I need to automate this. So basically, us as senior people in the industry, we first need to understand what they really need. And we also need to understand the entire process from start to end. And based on that, we identify what are the functional requirements and how we can put it into a solution or an automation solution. And while doing this, directly jumping into automation is not the answer. Because when we come to RPA, the processes that we have seen are not that easy to automate sometimes, because this process has been manual for a long time. And a lot of people have been doing this and they have their own ways of doing it. So we are not going to automate each and every way that we are doing. So before getting into the development side of things, we first need to understand the process and see how we can improve it. So as a part of that, sometimes before getting into automation, we sometimes come up with different process improvements as a part of the solution. So this entire journey starts from the requirement gathering part. So this is what a solution architect would do. The architect is mainly focused on understanding the process, coming up with a solution so that the developers can develop it and put it into production. So that is in very high level. But what are the actual roles of a solution architect? So these roles can vary in each and every stage in a in automation project. We first start from enable. So that's where we first identify the process. We go through the thing, we talk to different people, we understand their requirement, we understand their problem, and then we first see what's the infrastructure they have. And if you have to come up with an automation solution, how we can deploy it, whether we need to go for orchestrator, whether it's attended, unattended, automation. So all these things we identify at the very beginning. And based on that, we come up with what are the best practices that we can use, what are the coding standards, and all the other, the process or the automation related things, the technical stuff. So while doing this, a solution architect would also closely work with the business analyst, because sometimes a solution architect is actually coming from a technical background, and sometimes he might not understand the business very well. So that's where other business analyst comes into play to connect these two people. So the business analyst can help the solution architect by doing these requirement gathering sessions together and bridging that gap and trying to convert the business requirement into a technical language so that a solution architect can come up with a solution for this. And the next thing, once you have the entire requirement, then we do a feasibility study to see how we can optimize the process, how we can come up with a solution for this, what's the estimate, and what's the cost and everything. So it is very important to do this at the very beginning. I'll tell you some examples of this as we go on. And then once you identify the entire requirement, then we put this into a PDD. Business analyst will do that mainly. And then we do the sign off. And then from the solution architect side, he come up with an entire design plan. Just like an architect would design a house, a solution architect would design the solution that he's going to build in a diagram with each and every component in it, so that's by looking at that diagram, the developer would know that this is what is in his mind, and these are the components that I need to build, and this is how each and every component is going to relate to each other. So this is a very important part. And along with that, we will also be able to identify reusable components. Because, see, sometimes this process can be very straightforward and easy, but sometimes the processes are very, very complicated. And within a process, there can be a lot of multiple sub-processes that are connecting. So it's important to identify these things, and sometimes we can use certain components here and there without actually repeating the same code again and again. And then when it comes to building the design, the solution, from a solution architect point of view, he's not going to develop it. He will be actually overlooking this entire thing, helping the developers, guiding them, mentoring them, and making sure they follow the best practices that are laid down, and whether the logging and reporting is done properly, the source control, all these things will be handled by the solution architect. And also, we all know that requirements change even while this thing is being developed. So when some things change, how to adapt that into our design. So the solution architect would always keep an eye on that, and he will make changes and inform the developers that this is how we are going to develop it. And when it comes to testing, the architect would always do a code review and also give a design document, a solution design document, which is very technical, and it will have everything related to the solution, like all the workflows involved, the arguments, the variables, the use of each and every variable, and every single thing. So that once you hand over your solution, a technical guy can easily go through that and understand what is happening inside it. And then once you move into production, it's just about monitoring and providing the required support. So this is usually a role of a solution architect. So if you actually notice something, here I have highlighted one thing, the RE framework, Robotic Enterprise Framework in the usual name. So why it is important? This I will talk about this in a short while. This is very important part for a solution architect. And the next thing is, why are we talking about this? So why it is important? So basically, I have seen certain processes being developed by different people. Sometimes all of these things are built in a single workflow file. And I have actually seen very long workflow files, a single workflow file that has everything related to the process. So the bad thing about that is, even we cannot keep track of what's happened. And if you have to debug for an issue, it is very difficult. And if something changed, for you to, even for a simple change, it's very difficult because you first need to find where to change. And when everything is in one place, you need to do a lot of changes to even incorporate a simple thing. So this takes a lot of time, and it's not a reliable solution, because over time the data you process will increase, and you will have to improve your process, and also requirements will change as we go on. So overall, your process has to be reliable, and that's where you build the confidence of your users. So that's why it is important. And I will tell you one example. There was a solution that was created by a certain group to do a process. And it was built in a way where the workflow files contain a lot of things, and it wasn't commented properly, and it wasn't really easy to understand. And sometime back, the process actually changed in the organization. The system changed, and few other things also changed. And we were asked to incorporate certain new requirements and also add few changes to the process. So we identified the requirements, and then we looked at the existing process to see how we can put it into work. But with a lot of effort, because of the way it is being developed, we figured out that it's not even possible to incorporate any of those changes. So now you see how complicated things are. And what we had to do as a solution, started from the scratch, from the very beginning. But after designing that solution, again, sometime back, there were few changes, but those things we were able to easily merge it to the existing solution because we had a proper solution design, and things were separated into small components. So that even a small change, you just need to change one of those small components, and that's it. So this is a difference between a properly designed solution and a not properly designed solution. So that gives the answer to your question, why it is important. So we can avoid costly rework easily. And the main thing is we need to provide an accurate a solution for them. And also, when you come up with a proper design and design it in a most granular level, in simple terms, go to the workflow level when you're designing. I'll show something like that. And then when you have everything in the most granular level, you can see what components take a lot of time and what components do not take a lot of time, and how easy it is to build and how complicated certain components are. By looking at that, you can easily come up with accurate effort estimations and resource estimations. And having a proper solution designed like that, it will easily be able to understand by our developers. And it's sometimes it's not just one guy developing, it will be a team. And for them to easily work on certain parts and for them to know what they should expect from the other component and what they should send out as the output. So let's say Juvaria, myself, and Arjun, we are working on a project and we have 3 different components to build. And I'm building something and the output that I'm giving goes to Arjun's component. So for Arjun to work on that, he should know exactly what this guy is giving me. Otherwise, he will have an assumption, okay, this is something that he will give and this is how my workflow is going to look like. And then once you put everything together, there's a mismatch. That should not happen. So in the design itself, we should clearly define all of these things so that Arjun knows what to expect from the component that I'm building, and I know what to give him as my output. And then Juvaria, who is building a different component, she knows what she's going to expect and how she can build her component. So that part is also done through a proper design. And then a solution just should not just work. It should also work efficiently and accurately. So we should always know the functional and non-functional requirements. So when you say functional, that is the business requirements, the business logic, and what are the exceptions, and all those things. When it comes to non-functional requirements, we are talking about the how it is performing, the performance things, and the things related to reliability and those stuff. And as I mentioned earlier, we should be able to easily scale these solutions so that we can work even on multiple robots. Yeah. So that is why a solution design is important. And we, most of the time, or sometimes, do not do this part properly. We do a requirement gathering and understand the process, then directly go into a development. I have seen this happening. That's why I'm saying. So that should not happen. This part is very important to come up with a proper solution, and it will be easy for the developers as well. So how can we do this? We can actually start this in the requirement gathering session itself. So for us to come up with a solution, we should know what they want. So a solution architect and a business analyst should always work together to talk to the stakeholders who are actually working on this process and understand the proper requirement. I know there are challenges in getting the requirements because sometimes the users may not provide all the information, sometimes they also forget, and sometimes they might not have all the documentation needed to give you the answers that you're looking for. It takes time. But for us to come up with a proper design and a proper solution for them, we should do that. So again, I'll tell you another story. There was a document understanding solution that we created some couple of months back. And in that one, it was a very complicated process. And there were lots and lots of documents involved, different types, like more than 150 different types. And how you process each and every document is different. So what we did is we did some uh, workshops for them to understand what we are doing, and to set the stage so that they know what they should provide us and they know what to expect at the end, so that we don't scare people. So we did a requirement gathering session, and we had to go through a couple of rounds to get all the requirements. And once that is done, we analyzed everything and came up with a very detailed diagram along with the PDD. And we actually showed the solution design, this diagram, to the user and explained each and every component that this is what is happening. And at the end, we asked, is this what you're expecting? Or is something missing? Do you want to add a few things or change something? So they understood that this is what they want, and there were a few changes here and there. We made it and we got it approved, and then we know this is what we are going to develop. So that is why it is important. And once you get into the development stage, for the developers, it was very easy because it was very detailed. They designed the process and we tested it, moved into production. It's working fine now. And that's a good solution design. And on the other side, there was another project. In this one, it's not a document understanding thing, but it's an automation project. So what happened in this was, we had a high level requirement that this is what you should do. And we had different requirement gathering sessions, and they gave certain requirements, but certain things were not clear. But they went into development, and while developing, they ran into different new scenarios, and they were talking to business users all the time, trying to figure out certain things and changing what you already developed. It was a mess. So you can see when a design is not there, this is what happens. So that is why it is important to do a proper requirement gathering, do a proper design, get it approved, and then go for a solution, the developer. All right. So that being said, now let's talk about how to come up with this proper design and what's the role of the RE framework in a solution design. That's why I highlighted this. So what you see on the screen is the RE framework template that you see in Studio. So we all know that in RE framework, we have 4 components: the initialization, get transaction data, process, and end. So I'll just explain all 4 in very high level because this is a totally different topic altogether. So initialization stage is where you set everything or keep everything ready for you to process the data. For example, you log into application and keep the applications involved ready within the initialization, so that once you get into process, you have the data and you just need to interact with the application on the screens that's needed. And get transaction data will give you the data for you to do the process. And in the process state, you can have all the business logics, you can have different exceptions and everything related to your process. And at the end, you close everything, clear it, and stop the process. So as we saw earlier, I think most of the guys are senior people. So I assume that we know the dispatch and performer concept. So why are we talking about this here is because it is very easy when you use this concept in your solution design to break this process into smaller components, because you're not going to create a process in a single automation solution. It will be always broken down into multiple small parts. and nobody is going to question you why you have 10 different processes to do this. If it's the best way to do it, that is the best way to do it, and you should have the 10 different components. And we as experts in our industry, we know that that's the best way. So, and when you talk about these processes, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes these processes are very complicated, and sometimes it's very straightforward. And as a recommendation, you can always use RE framework, even though it's a sequential thing. Some of you might disagree, but using it has its own benefits, like exception handling. It's up to you. But in general, if the process is very complicated and a lot of things are happening within the process, make sure to put everything into a big diagram and see where you can split this into multiple components. Like we'll also be having an example, so I'll show you how to do one. And that's where this dispatch and performer concept comes in. So you do certain thing in a dispatcher, you pass the data to a performer, and something happens there. And that's not the end. You can have multiple performers, and maybe you can have different dispatchers as well. It can be a combination of everything. So always make sure to identify those things and break it into this concept. It's very easy after that. And how you transfer data between processes, if you are using orchestrator, you can easily use skips and data tables, or you can use even a SQL database, whatever that suits you the best. And with those things, we can easily connect these processes and keep them separate. Okay, so that's the importance of RE framework in a design. So let me take you to a simple, not a simple, it's a bit of a complicated use case, because I want to actually show you how to do this. So this is a vendor management use case that I came up with. So I have a separate diagram, so I'll explain the process later, but this is what happens in very high level. The first thing is, in this process, you first need to access 3 different systems, download some raw data, and then each system will have its own format, and will have its own file. So once you download, you need to do some filtering, do some manipulations, and then come up with the data that you need and save it in a central location. This happens for all 3 systems, and how you do things in the system is different. And then once you have the output files, you need to access these files, extract the data, and put it into a consolidated report. And this report has to be created for each and every user separately. So think of it as different vendors. So you're separating this consolidated report into different vendors, and you're going to place it in a folder specific to the vendor. And sometimes a vendor can have multiple files like this. And then the next part is, you have this data, then next thing is you need to email this information to your people and asking to send some responses based on that. So now when it comes to emails, you send it, and then you need to keep track of the responses, and you don't expect them to do a proper thing all the time. Sometimes they might ask different questions, sometimes they will give us invalid data, sometimes they might not even respond. So we need to handle those things separately. Like based on certain business rules, we need to see whether we need to escalate this in case they're not responding or something has happened to different people. Or if the data is not valid, you need to reply back and say that this is not valid and please do a proper check and so on. And once you have the valid data, you need to go and update internal application. So this is the process. So you can see there are a lot of things happening, a lot of systems involved, a lot of communication happening back and forth. So it's not that simple. So that being said, let me show you this in a high level diagram. So this is in very high level. Okay, so the same thing in visually for better understanding. So we download the data from 3 different systems, filter the data, and prepare the consolidated report for each user. Save it, and this part happens repetitively until you get the proper information from them, and you do follow-ups, you do escalations, and finally, once you have the info, you update the internal system. So this is in very high level, but this is not enough because there are a lot of things happening in each and every part. So now we need to go for a detailed diagram. So let me show you that part. I'm not going to go and say each and every step because it's a simple case study that I created. But in general, just think. So we have 3 systems. And first thing is we access the system 1, let's say. We log into the system, do some navigation to get into the page that we need, enter certain information like different date ranges and so on to generate the data and download the file. And then we do some filtering, do some manipulations, and save it in a place. Same thing happens to system 2 and system 3, but the interface is different, the how you do things is different in each and every system. And at this point, you have all the data you need to start the next part. And then we extract data from all these 3 files and do some work over there, like preparing consolidated report for each and every guy and save it in the folder. So that's another part. And then once you have that information, you can actually extract all the people that you need to send emails and see whether the files are available. And then for each guy, you extract the file from the folder. And okay, there's a part where we also need to update some templates. Template documents like Excel file, let's say, based on the data you have in those files, and then send it out as an email to the vendor so that they can go through and update the data and come back to us. So this will happen for each and every guy. And let's assume they have like more than 1,000 vendors. And then whenever the vendors respond, you need to read the data and go take the data through different business logics and see whether you need to escalate it or whether the data is valid, and then escalate or update the internal systems as needed. So this is kind of a detailed thing. So there can be different business logics, which I have not mentioned here because this is just for a demo purpose. But in real world scenarios, there are lots and lots of business rules like this that we need to handle. Okay, so this being said, now let's see how we can break this entire process into different components or different sub-processes. So just think what will happen if we create all this in a single solution. It's going to be very, very complicated. And it's going to be difficult to keep track of what's happening. So as a solution architect, you can, once you have the detailed diagram, you can actually see where you can break things. Like here, for example, you have different systems where you interact with and download files. But this is not the same for other systems. So do you really need to have this in a single solution? No. You can keep it separate. So whatever happens in this, have it as a separate process. You can create a simple RE framework, do the login thing in the initialization, do some navigation there, do the business rule check and download the file and do everything in the process and close it. So that's one part of the solution. So yeah, can I draw a box here? Okay, I need to make this transparent. Where am I? Give me a second. Just trying to make it transparent.
If you click on fill, the fill option, Lairu. Yeah.
Thanks, Arjun. Yeah, so this is one part. And you can do the same here. And this is another process. And then same applies to this one as well. So what's the benefit of doing this? And let's say these systems will have their own ways of extracting and own times where you can extract data. So you can easily schedule these separately. And this thing runs at 9 a.m., this runs at 10, and this runs in the midnight. You don't know. It can happen. But if you have everything in one single process, it's not possible. So that's a simple example of the benefit of having things separate. And by the end of this, you will have data stored in a separate place. And that will be your trigger for your next part of the process. What happens here is you extract the data based on what's created from these three, do some logics, do some manipulation, and create another data set in a different folder. And so you can see where the data is coming from and what's the output at the end. Output is a set of files. So this can be another one, another process. So let me draw it like this. So we already have 4 different processes. Now, based on this output, we can easily get the vendor list maybe from a database or somewhere we have it, and then start sending emails. Now, if you wonder, we are sending emails and they are responding to that. Do we need to handle the responses in the same solution? These are some common questions that we hear from developers. Actually, no. If we properly do this, you can have some reusable components from this email sending thing in the response part. I'll tell you how. So before getting into responses, let's first see how we can send out the emails, because that's important. So the first thing is getting the people involved. And for each and every guy, get the files, update the templates, and send out the email. So again, the email is your output. And you get the data from this part. Let's worry about the response data. So this is one part. Now, let's see. So now you have sent out the emails. Now you need to monitor your email or the inbox for different response. And you can always keep track of the emails that you send, maybe in a database or somewhere that you like, or even a log sheet that you keep track of. And whenever you have a new email, you can look at that log or the database to see, is this a part of your conversation that you initiated by sending out an email? You can look at the email addresses and things like that to come up with a link. And if so, that's where you handle the response. So then again, now you read your email. That's your input. And you apply all the business rules involved and see whether it's valid or not. And if not valid, you again need to send out it to the same guy saying this is wrong, please provide the correct info. So now you can see there's a reusable part. So we can easily get this component and put it inside this solution without doing a single code change. So that's another small part. I'll just mark it like this. Applications with valid data. Do I need to do that in this part itself? Actually, again, the answer is no, because this thing can be purely created just to handle the responses. To handle the responses, get the data, and make sure it's valid, and probably put it into a orchestrator queue so that this guy can easily access that data from the queue and do the system update. So it is not even worried about the emails. It's just getting the data from the queue. That's all it does. So this can be another part where you can actually have different RE framework solution again to do that. And if you think, do I need to use the RE framework here? You can actually, because there are a lot of rules involved. There are a lot of things that you can do and you have to do. So it's always good to use it in the RE framework itself. And when it comes to escalations, that can be a different process as well. You just pass the data through a queue or by updating a database table or even Excel file, and it can do its own thing. So that's how you can break a process into multiple components. So then if something changes somewhere over here, we just need to update that part and the rest remains the same. So it's all about understanding these connecting points. It's purely based on that. Once you have that understanding, you can easily break it into different solutions. And I personally recommend to use the RE framework as a best practice. But different people have different ways of doing it and different best practices based on their company. Yeah, but it's always good to use RE framework because of the way it is designed and because of the exception handling and things like that that is inbuilt into the framework. So I'll show you how to do a small part of this and put it into our RE framework. Let's take this part. So when you're designing your solution, put it into this structure. This is usually something that I follow. You might have your own thing, but I'm just showing this as an example. So what I have here is the 4 lanes. 4 lanes represent your RE framework, the initialization, get transaction, process, and the end. So let's take this part. How does this work? We get, as a start, we first need to get the data from the vendor database, let's say. We first need to identify who are the vendors. So this is our starting point. We are not interacting with any application. let's say it's a database. So we can do that in the initialization so that we have all the data we need to get into this stage. So I can, let's say, where are my diagrams? Okay, so I can start here. I'll just quickly do this. And let's say I get the data from the database. Connect to database. And always when doing this, put it into the most granular level. Each and every task you perform, put it into a box like this. Extract vendor data. Let me know if you guys cannot see what I'm typing. So the benefit of doing like this is this can actually represent a separate workflow in your initialization. And that's how easy you can separate the smallest things into small components so that let's say myself and Julia, we are working on this, and I can work on the connect to database. She can work on the vendor extraction. And what does she expect? The connection. And what's the output? The vendor list. You can easily come up with those lists, the information like the arguments, in and out arguments that you need to provide. And then once you have this, so you have the list now, and based on our diagram over here, we are looking through each and every vendor. So what is your transaction? It's this guy, the vendor that you extracted from here. So you can have the get transaction done inside this. I'll just use this one out for each vendor. This can be a queue or whatever the thing you want. And there you go. You easily link this here. And for each vendor, what you're going to do, everything that happens until you send the email, all those things go inside this, the process part. Where is my diagram again? Okay, so we have the extract files, we update the template and send the email. Just copy these things from here for now. So I don't take a lot of time. And then you update a template. And then you send the email. Send email. So these things can be separate workflows. Like this. And just think of it like this now. And if you are to hand this over to your developer or your team and assign certain tasks to them, you can easily say, okay, Arjun, you can work on this, and Julia, you can work on this, and likewise. And you can also come up with some kind of a document that says, these are the input arguments for this, these are the output arguments, and this is what to expect, like input and output for each and every box here, so that they know what kind of data they are going to get and what to provide as the output. That way, you can easily, even if you develop things separately, you can easily integrate into one solution. So this is a small part of how you can use the RE framework in your solution design and how you can split it into multiple solutions like this. Okay, so that's pretty much it in terms of the demo. And one last question, or maybe one last point that I can mention here is, this way you will end up with multiple processes. but it is actually good. The reason is you have everything separate and you can easily maintain each and everything. You don't need to worry about changes. And even if something happens or some change happen in this part of the process, none of the other things are affected by that. And going into the most granular level, you can actually easily see where to change and what will change if there's a requirement change in your process. And so in here, we don't have any business rules because it's a simple process that I created. But in the real scenario, you will have a lot of rules. So I actually think that having those rules even created here, or the decision points and everything, it will be very clear what happens with the data and how your process needs to be developed and what are the different components involved. So that is the benefit of getting into the most detailed level when coming up with a solution design.
I think Raidu, it
So-
answers a very important question that Asif put down here in the chat, that what happens if the stakeholder doesn't explain a process properly, and then down the line you figure out after your UAT sign off that we might need to change the process and there's a different requirement altogether. So I think you've answered the question very beautifully through your presentation over here. So if you actually divide your processes into multiple smaller processes, it makes it easier for you to understand what the business requirements are. And then in case if there are any future requirements, you could cater to them like individually without affecting something that's already into the production or something that's not even affected by your requirement change. So yeah, I think that's one important takeaway I would say. I felt.
And also, yeah, just to add to that, and even if you don't know the entire requirement, this can happen all the time. But once you get the high level understanding of the process, once you go through the process and see what they're doing, still, I think you can come up with this without all those business rules and everything. In high level, put it into a diagram, always put it into a diagram and see what is happening in the process. And along with that, see where the connecting points are so that you can break things into smaller portions like this. And if something changes down the line, you can figure out where to implement the change. I hope that answers the question.
For sure, it does. So we open the space for questions and open discussions. Like if you've got any thoughts about the demo, about the presentation, any question or any point that you think is important to mention here as a solution architect, please pop up, unmute yourself and go ahead. Jump in.
Let me also add one point here. So by doing this, because we are talking about effort estimations, yeah, there's another one. Okay, good. So once you actually put down your solution into this diagram, in this or this, so there will be multiple diagrams like this for this thing. I just did it for a smaller part. So when you have these things like as shown here, then you can easily see what would be the effort for this part of the process. Now you can see each and every component. So does it really take like 1 week to create a database connection? No, it can be done in about 1 hour maximum. So when you have these components like this, now you can put it into Excel. Let's say, let me find Excel file. Okay. All right. So with this thing, I can say connect to DB. This can be done in about 1 hour, maybe. And extract vendor data, based on the systems, right? I'm just guessing here. It can be done in about 3 hours. So likewise, you can come up with estimates for each and every part of this process and total it up at the end. So that's your effort for this part of the process. Do the same thing for other processes, and then you get the final total for. So in this case, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. 8 altogether. You have estimates for each and every process. And at the end, you can say overall, okay, for this component, for this process, you take 10 days, for this thing, you take 5 days, and so on. At the end, you will say overall, I need 2 months to do this entire thing. It's easy when you have it in small parts.
Lyra, we have a question from Surya. Are there any metrics-based logic, such as number of applications and so on?
Yeah, that can be. So basically, sometimes you need to interact with different applications. For example, let's say system 1 is a simple web application. And for system 2, you need to connect to a remote desktop and do things over there. And this is another SAP application. So when you talk about the normal web application, remote desktop, and SAP, it has its own complexities. So our estimates should be based on this. If SAP is usually complicated, and just add more time for those things. And if it's like a simple web application, actually, before doing it, just try to get some access, or actually look at how a user is doing. So you can feel what kind of a system this is, what kind of elements are there on the screen, whether it's even possible to capture or not. And even if it's like a terminal application, let's say, it's totally different. So have a look at those things, and based on those applications, do your estimates.
Lyra, would you mind sharing this PowerPoint as a step-by-step guide on solution architecture portion? I think it would be a very good, say, cookbook for solution architects.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you. So I hope this also answers one of our questions in the chat. So UiPath has an XML file that let us measure the Excel file that let us measure these metrics and derive the effort.
Yes.
Yeah, there was an Excel file, but even I can't get hold of it. So maybe Surya, if we find it, we can rotate it with everybody.
I think I have it. I downloaded it from one of the previous courses that was there in the academy. If I had it, so I'll share it with you, so you can share it across. And that is also one of the good Excel sheets that you can use to assess your process in the requirement gathering session.
Perfect. Do we have anybody, any other questions, or anybody would like to unmute themselves? Cool.
Yeah, this is
Sorry,
Surya.
go on, Surya.
Yeah. About when I was looking at the solution architecture roles and the what they have to do and everything, right? I have a feeling that it's very, very close to what you call the automation COE lead role. And so is that a fair estimate, or do you think that there could be something else that the COE lead would have to take on in addition to solution architecture? Or is the comparison, does it even make sense to compare the two roles?
I think
yeah, Arjun, go ahead, sir.
Just giving my feedback. I think the COE lead grooms to become a solution architect, but then the automation lead and solution architect roles and responsibilities will be slightly different, because the automation lead will also have the responsibility of training and mentoring and maintaining everything. However, from a solution architect point of view, it will be more of that how can we go up the ladder, and how also bring in some other technologies in place like document understanding, etc. So I think as well as solution architects should have a taste of other applications as well. I believe so. With us progressing towards the world of APIs, where there are so many applications which just provide connectors and all, there also the solution architect has to dwell in. Whereas the automation lead slightly has some different roles and responsibilities. But you're right, most of the responsibilities are shared. So I would say the automation lead can progress to be a solution architect. But yeah, some of the roles and responsibilities would be difficult to tackle.
Okay.
Sorry, go on, Lairu.
Yeah, that's the same thing I also wanted to say. Yeah. So you say.
Thanks, Arjun. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We have one more question, Lairu. Do you see solution architect also designing infrastructure requirements?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. So it can depend based on the client that you are working for and based on different environments. So in my experience, I also work as a solution architect. So for some of the clients, we actually did not go in that level of detail into the infrastructure side. But in general, you need to at least provide certain information like the number of machines you need to do this and the performance of these machines and things like that to handle certain things, because that is something they would not know. So setting up those things, they will expect your support in certain stuff. But when it comes to like a on-prem solution and setting up the orchestrator on-prem and setting up all the other stuff, solution architect might not get involved in all of those things, because there are a lot of infrastructure related things where a specialist in that side needs to look at. And solution architect might not know everything in those things. So it will be a combination of both, but mostly infrastructure related stuff will be handled by infra guy.
So, but I believe that knowing the know-how of the infra side is also important for a solution architect. So just have that kind of balance when you're dealing with such situations. So we have a question: as a solution architect, how to monitor and ensure the best practices developed by developers? We'll hold on to that question. There's a question about training. I would say that go on UiPath Academy. There is a course on solution architecture. That's a very good startup point. And then you can go on to the forum. There are questions, and on the forum, we've got a part where there are open cases. You could pick it up and start your practice from there. So yeah, let's get back to the question then. As a solution architect, how to monitor and ensure the best practices developed by developers?
Okay, so based on my slide deck earlier, am I sharing my screen? All right, so this also partially relates to that COE question that we had. So a solution architect is more like the most senior guy in the technical team. So basically the best practices coding standards will be developed by him and will be shared with the team. So as a responsibility and as a role of a solution architect, while building these solutions, architect is always responsible to ensure they are developing the code in the proper way, following the best practices, and making sure it's running in the most efficient way. So that has to be reviewed by a solution architect all the time before putting it into production. So this can happen even during testing as well, because once you develop, there will always be a code review part. And there'll be a audit to make sure your code is working properly and it adheres to all the best practices. And usually in companies, we have a best practice document. If you don't have it, actually just try to create one and share it with your team so that they all know that these are the best practices that you need to follow. And
Also in the
adhere
chart,
while
Surya,
creating.
also in the chart, Lyra Surya has mentioned that RP governance that can be automated with automation ops. I think it's a statement. I would say, like, when it comes to best practices and the things that we are discussing right now as a part of the question, automation ops is very underrated. So if you've got a set of best practices and that can be changed into a policy, go ahead, use automation ops, create your own policies and deploy it. It's a very central location where you could actually govern what kind of development is going on in your organization, and a solution architect and your admin both have the eyes on it. So it's a very good way of using automation ops to develop your own best practices and policies in the organization. And Anjan, I think that can be a very good topic for one of our sessions.
Yeah, one of us. I was thinking the same, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Surya. Cool. Should we progress towards the Mentimeter quiz then, Julia?
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. So we have a Mentimeter quiz prepared by Arjun, and we are going to select one winner, and we have a $50 voucher for that winner. So give your best, guys.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah, and if you log into menti.com and use the code 24899995 or the QR code.
Lyra, just don't jump in the call because we don't want you to win.
Can I have that QR code one more time, please?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I lost it. Oh, thank you.
Second. We'll give it one more minute. I hope the quiz really helps. So it's an informative quiz. So if you had, your eyes and ears open throughout the session, I believe you could win a voucher. Yeah, definitely. Every time we get this to be okay, 16 people so far. 10, 17. Yeah, should we give it a start? Okay, we'll give it a start. Okay, so question 1. You have to answer fast to get more points. The question 1 is, what does SDD stand for? Options being simple design document, solution design document, system design document, or structured design document. Okay, very good. Solution design document is the right answer. I know it's confusing, simple design document and system design document, but in UiPath or in RPA, SDD stands for solution design document. Cool. Progressing towards the next question. Okay, sorry, the leaderboard. Lizard is the leader.
Also Harshit.
Harshit, yeah, same points. So yeah, we've got a tie already. Question 2, yeah. What does RE framework stand for? Reusability framework, robotics framework, Resident Evil framework, or robotic enterprise framework? Okay, time's up. Okay, robotics framework and robotic enterprise framework. Yeah, so robotic enterprise framework is the right answer. Robotics framework, no, because you've got the E element in between. So that's why, it's called robotic enterprise framework. And that is what Lahiru showed, dispatcher and the performer. So this is available on UiPath as a template, which could be straight away used. Okay, let's see where the leaderboard is. Okay. It's changed. Okay, yeah. Guru and Gram have the tie. Oh, again a tie. Okay, but Gram was fastest. So Guru, yeah, you need to be fastest. In the next question. Okay, question 3 of 5. At which stage should RE framework be considered by a solution architect? If you were keeping your eyes closed, there was a kind of diagram showed by Lahiru. And in that, there was an element where RE framework should be considered. So that's where we have 4 options: prepare, test, sustain, or build. Prepare is the right answer. So it is initially considered in the prepare. Obviously, it has to be considered in the build, but it's first needs to be considered at the prepare. So yeah. Let's see the leaderboard. Okay, Kram is leading. Nice one. Harshit, you can still win this. And so can others, yeah. What is dispatcher used for? So there was 2 elements, dispatcher and performer. Is it used to work transactions, to dispatch robots, to load data into queues or data tables, or to execute test cases? Okay, time's up. It's used to load data into queues and data tables. So performer is used to perform once the transactions are loaded, and that's how, the difference between dispatcher and performer is basically dispatcher adds everything into queue or data table for the performer for basically multiple robots to work. And that is how basically we do queue management or data management, as well as also loading amongst the various robots. So dispatcher is used to load data into queues and data tables. Okay, let's see where the leaderboard is now. Okay, Gram is leading. Harshit, you're not far behind. You can catch him. Last question. What is the importance of solution design? Increase in cost, ability to scale easily, inaccurate timelines, or reduces time collaboration? That's right. So it's ability to scale easily. No, it's decrease in cost and it's accurate timelines, and it improves team collaboration. Those were the disadvantages which are listed, and ability to scale easily was the advantage. Yes. Let's see where the leaderboard is.
We've got a clear winner here.
We have a winner. It's Gram. Yeah, congratulations, Gram.
Gram, why don't
You've
you
scored
put
this.
your email in the chat and we'll forward you the voucher.
Yeah, happy to do that. That was fun. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Yeah. Any closing remarks, Lahiru Juveria?
I think I thoroughly enjoyed the demo session from Lairu.
Yeah, it was very informative.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And I'm taking back a few good points from there. Thank you, Lahiru. Thank you for, being so informative and also playing a demo which makes it much more easy for us to understand and also, bring it to our life as well. So thank you very much. Just on last note, we would like you guys to let us know what all, you would require. Should it be more of a development or citizen development, or, like areas like solution architect, business analyst? We are open to suggestions. We are hoping, to have more meetups and invite more speakers, but we would like we would like to know from you what do you actually need so that we can bring the right topic on the floor. We are also happy to share our personal email address and mobile number, and also the LinkedIn profile, and you can ping us at any time. So we'll just put our mobile number, yeah.
Yeah, and also Surya, we've got a series planned on our PA COE. We call it as our PA Leader Series. Hopefully we'll see you in the future sessions then.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted, Surya, and it would be good to connect on LinkedIn for any of these further sessions upcoming. But no, please let us know what you all want, and so that we can bring the right content. Jaiveria, any closing remarks?
Yes, join us for the community. We want you all to be there in the community so it could grow and like we could have good audience and good participation. Ping us on our number on LinkedIn, wherever you want to reach out to us and come with your ideas, what you want to see, what we could improve. And yeah, let's collaborate. It should be fun.
Yeah, and also do subscribe to the London chapter for any events coming up, so you can get an email or message as soon as possible. Yeah, but we're really looking forward for the same audience, and please forward the message to your peers as well, so that we can grow this more and more. Thank you all for joining, and have a wonderful evening ahead, and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.